The Bear, Season 1, Episode 1, Breakdown. The opening is very, very dramatic and very cinematic. That clicking sound that you hear is something that every chef knows in the back of their head. They've heard it a million times, which is the clicking of the pilot on certain stoves. And then you can hear the fire start as Carmy starts to walk across the bridge. Carmy's approaching the cage with a grizzly bear inside. And as he opens it, you can start hearing the ticking in the background, which is the clock. And the bear lunges for him and he wakes up. He wakes up on the prep table, which is a little dramatic, but I think anyone who's ever opened up their own restaurant has fallen asleep on a couch or curled up on a prep table at least once. I know I have. What I love about the intro to this is the music hits and it's very anxiety ridden. It's very fast paced. It's just like it's hitting, and that's very much what it is to be a chef owner of a small restaurant like this. And then he gets to the front door. He ordered 250 pounds or 200 pounds of meat, and 25 pounds were delivered because that's all they had the money for. They could not afford more than that, so they deliver what you could pay for. The quick cuts and the close-ups of Carmy while I was on the phone talking to a vendor really emphasize the anxiety that it is to be a chef owner. And then it pans over and quick cuts of past due bills, last notices is more common than anyone wants to talk about. You will see past due notices, you'll see last notices, you'll see collection notices. You always hope you won't, but there's always a day when you see it. Second character we're introduced into the show is an amazing actress in this because she represents a very key person in every small restaurant. And if you worked in a restaurant long enough, you've worked with 20 or 30 of them. They are the backbone of most kitchens. There's a point where she walks up and she says, you cut your vegetables like a bitch. That character, that chef is gonna give you the most amount of shit. At the same time, she's gonna be like the mom to everyone in the kitchen. Then Carmy stops and says, don't wipe your hands on your apron, chef. That's a very fine dining thing, is you want a clean apron. You have a towel for wiping your hands. And she turns real quick and she's like, chef, because no one at that point has probably ever called her a chef. Then the back alley deal, which has happened more often than not with a lot of people, where you need that connection and you have to have a back alley deal where you have a guy who doesn't have proper paperwork, but he's got the meat, he's got the whatever you need, the wine, whatever, and he shows up the back door, but he got to pay in cash, and there's not going to be an invoice. So we had come to the end of the long cut that they had of that one long scene. The beef is going in the oven now. It's an exhale, a long exhale of just finally, it's done. I'm here. He looks at the clock, and it's 10:25, which means he has limited time to get everything done before the lunch rush hits. Now in walks the stage for sous chef. I love this character. Most chefs were this character at some point in time. She's a little overambitious. She knows everything and nothing all at the same time. Very young, very, very talented, but a little too driven at times. And then as Carmy scans her resume, you're looking at some of the best restaurants in the world, some of the best restaurants in this country at least. And the pause of him and looking at her and go, so why do you want to cook here? Which I've been asked before, especially when you're put on the spot right there of like, you just came from something that had a Michelin star. Why do you want to work at this sandwich shop? Why do you want to flip burgers type of thing? The second that she answers the question, which is why does she want to work there? Nostalgia. Nostalgia is a huge factor in what chefs do. There isn't a moment where I don't cook something that has some connection to a past memory, a core memory. And for her, it was her father's favorite place. And that's a beautiful thing. The funny part is she throws it right back in his face, because you don't know this yet in this episode for the most part, but Carmy is of Michelin pedigree. He worked at 11 Madison Park, which is considered to be one of the best restaurants in the world, best restaurants in the country. And he was a CDC there. And his response is perfect. I'm making sandwiches. Now we start getting introduced to all the other characters. I love every single one of these characters because they're so real. Anyone who's spent many years in the industry has met every single person in this kitchen. As a new chef walking into a new restaurant, whether they know you or not, you're still new blood. Then we have the characters going on and on about the systems. They have systems in place they've probably been doing for, I don't know, 15, 20, 30 years, depending on how long the restaurant's been open. But sometimes you need to mix things up. The second character we got introduced to is making fun of Carmy now by calling him Jeff instead of chef. Just a little tick, tick, tick to get under his skin because she doesn't respect him yet. This is where we really get to see, or you get to see, the inner workings of a restaurant, where you have the stage, Sydney, asking where the family shelf is. She comes up and she asks Tina, where's the family shelf? Every restaurant, for the most part, has a family shelf. You did a big party last night, you have extra stuff, goes in the fucking family shelf. She asked Tina, but Tina doesn't respect her yet. She's an outsider. So Tina does the very typical, sorry, I don't speak English. Abraham comes around and lets her know, bottom shelf, that's where we put our stuff. Then we're introduced to other characters. We have Marcus, we have Ibrahim. There's a moment where Marcus says, I have to do all this by hand. I've been telling you the mixer's fucked up, it doesn't work. If you ever worked in a small kitchen, small restaurant, equipment breaks all the goddamn time. You don't have a food processor that works, so now you gotta do everything by hand. You don't have a blender that works, you gotta bring one in from your house. And then Carmy looks at Marcus and says, look, we're behind, I can't buy a new one right now, but I can get you a new one, which is always the hope. I'll get you a new one, I'll fix it. It's just that moment of like, we just gotta get through fucking today. If we can get through today, we will get new equipment. Now in walks Richie. He's brash, he's an asshole. Best way to describe him, he's an asshole. Has very little respect for technique. He doesn't care where you worked. He's also kind of a pain in the ass. And usually the reason that the restaurant's not doing well. And he comes in and it's always the same thing. You're not doing it the way that we were doing it. And he questions every single thing and giving you shit the entire time when you got 5 minutes to open, 10 minutes to open, and he's just going at it. In the end, he's a vital part of this restaurant. And now for the walk-in meeting. Every chef has a walk-in meeting. I had 2 today, where you take someone inside the walk-in and you need to be in private. And back to the system. You order different fucking mayonnaise. The guys are texting me saying you're telling them to do different shit because they've been doing things for X amount of years the exact same way. And when you change things, everyone gets upset in the kitchen. In the middle of their walk-in meeting, Marcus opens the door and says, hey, we're low on olive oil. Small restaurants sometimes lack certain structure when it comes to like inventory sheets. So you just have basically people like, hey, we're low on this, hey, we're out of that. And usually you're hoping they don't tell you in the moment, like, hey, we're about to open and we don't have this. Now, so much is happening in this next scene. Richie's coming in and he's still calling like an asshole. He's making fun of him. Richie then calls him Bobby Flay. This happens often in these type of restaurants where you'll have someone call you Bobby Flay or Emerald or someone off Food Network because it's the only chef they really know. It's meant as an insult to be like, fuck you, you went off to culinary school, you're Bobby Flay. Carmy says, hey, can you stir that for me? He's working on other shit. He needs his new sous chef who's staging to stir his pot, to look after it, to make sure it's where he wants it to be. And she asks if he wants a cartouche. So a cartouche is you take a piece of paper, you fold it, you cut it, you get a perfect circle, you put that over so that you can release some steam, but not all the steam. So you can let something simmer for many more hours and develop more flavor without evaporating all the liquid. And Richie turns and is like, the fuck's a cartouche? Because he's still in the mentality of like, you're fancy, that you're fucking up our restaurant. Now we get to the spaghetti incident. Great album. He says, because a Levin Masson Park dickhead couldn't figure it out. When you come from certain restaurants, you come down to a more casual restaurant, you look at the greater menu, and sometimes you have items on menus that don't fit. You'll be ordering 2 or 3 items just for that one dish. And it doesn't make sense. You need to have a lot of crossover in your menu to make the most profit so you can open for another day and serve more people. And a big thing that goes on through the show is Carmy calls everyone chef, which in a lot of restaurants it happens for a few reasons. In big kitchens where you have 25 or 30 people and you're the chef, honestly, sometimes you're not gonna remember every single person's name. It's not that you don't remember the person, but you have so many things in your head that you don't always remember their name in the moment. But at the same time, you call everyone chef as a sign of respect in the kitchen. Now they're making fun of Carmy for not being able to make pasta, but obviously he knows how to make pasta. But he's still complaining about the dish because the dish doesn't work. It also probably wasn't done with a certain level of technique that he's used to. But I love the knife work that's happening the whole time because it's actually Jeremy Allen White doing all the knife work. He went to school for a temporary time to hardcore train to learn how to do this. So there's no hand models in this. He's actually the one doing everything with his hands, which is amazing. But I also love that Sydney, the sous chef in Stage, the knife she's using is a knife I have in my bag, which is a Mac. They're cheap knives, the cheaper knives, but they are like razor blades if you take care of them. Carmy has Japanese knives with the wooden sheath, and he asks everyone like, have you seen my knife? And Tina responds, have you seen my pot, Jeff? She's still saying Jeff, just to poke fun at of him calling everyone chef. Then he does the biggest mistake that all of us do. He reaches for a pot on the stove. Assume everything in the kitchen is hot. You always have a towel in your hand when you grab things. The burner was off, but that old stove they have, whether the flame is on or not, everything, every square inch of that stove is burning hot. So he grabs onto it and burns the shit out of him. In walks Matty Madison, who's an amazing chef and hilarious, and he's perfect for this fucking character of like the handyman who wants to be a cook, but he's just the handyman. Well, Carmy is talking to Matty to try and get the ball breaker game to work. He says, you're bleeding. He looks down, his hand's bleeding because he has dull knives. Dull knives will always cut you before a sharp knife will. And then cut to Carmy walking into the bathroom, dimly lit, and on the shelf there's Tums, usually next to some cornstarch. In the background you hear the bear, the growl, the anger inside him and building because of the bullshit he's dealing with. Carmy leaves the bathroom, walks in, and Richie has the entire staff distracted, telling him a stupid fucking story. He's trying to get their attention because he wants to define the roles, make sure everyone is in their place. He looks down, he sees his knife on the ground, which means either someone, most likely Tina, knocked it off, dropped it, or put it there on purpose. And the amount of anger you see in his eyes is beautiful because it's probably a $150 to $200 Japanese knife. As Carmen's holding his knife, he looks up and he sees a picture of Jesus and then a flashback to the morgue. And then you can hear sirens in the background, you can hear police radio chatter, and it's the flashback to his brother who killed himself. Then seconds later, he's walking out to see his sister, Sugar, which is Carmen's sister. You can tell from their first interaction they haven't seen each other in a while, which sadly is common in our industry, where you don't see family for weeks, months, or even years because you're focused on the job at hand. You're focused on the career, the life. And there's a slow and long embrace with a hug. And you can see the love/sadness in both their eyes because they have not had that type of moment in such a long time. Where Sugar is talking about their mom and how she'd love to talk to him or see him. And you can see Carmen hold back tears because he probably hasn't seen the family since long before his brother killed himself. And then they talk about Uncle Jimmy wanting to buy the place. There's a part of Carmen that desperately wants to just get rid of it, but overwhelmingly he wants to hold on to it because it's his family's restaurant. It's been his family for 25 years. So he can't give up now because it's still open, it's still thriving. Maybe thriving is the wrong word. Cuts back into Marcus and Richie. Richie can't find something, and Marcus makes fun of him like it's fucking right there, it's labeled properly. But then he looks up and he sees the infamous Noma book, and inside it is a James Beard Award for 2021 Restaurant and Chef Awards. Rising Star Chef of the Year, which only a few get. It's highlighting the accolades that Carmen has worked towards, that everyone in this restaurant is currently making fun of. But there's a small part of Marcus that generally respects it. Now we're at the point where Carmen gets to show off his skill with a sandwich. And he tells Marcus, you know, the bread's too dry, it's too crumbly. Marcus is a young chef. It's like, don't tell me how to do my job. But Carmen, who has years of experience, you pick up small things. He tells him to throw a sheet pan of water in the bottom, gives him more steam, is you're gonna get a fluffier, softer roll than you would if you don't. And now it's time to show off what he can do with a sandwich. Now as everyone's trying a sandwich, you have Ibrahim who's gonna make fun of him, but then Tina, she takes a bite and it's that smile and it's a very good puta, and she's making fun of him still, but she's slowly gaining respect for him because she now sees that he can cook. He can actually cook with soul. He can cook with his heart. Cut back to Sydney, our stage. Gary walks up and asks, so how are you gonna pass the family test, family meal? Delicious or impressive? She has the perfect response. Delicious is impressive. Now we're gonna more into the family meal part where Sydney runs up, you got any stale bread? We're using a lot of stuff. Like you'll take stale bread and you'll dip it in broth or whatever, you know, that's family meal because you're with the family, which is everyone in the kitchen. Deli cups. When you get to-go food, you usually get your soup in this or your stew or something liquid. In this scene, they're serving a salad in one, hot food in the other, which is so common. They're unbreakable and something you can hold in your hand. I'll use my glass. Hold in your hand, eat out of, takes up less space. You can have in your line. You're not supposed to eat in the line, but you know, it happens. This is an important part. You get moments to relax before the shit hits the fan, which is every service, especially in a fast-paced diner like this. The only part that's not that common is when you go around, you ask, you know, what are you thankful for? I've only been in 2 kitchens that do that, but it is important to know what everyone is thankful for and what family truly means. And the most accurate part of this is the chef, Carmen, isn't eating. He's not sitting down either. After Carmen's basically assaulted by the crowd that's building outside for this fucking fake game ball breaker, Richie has to break it up. They come inside, back to the system. He says, we're not prepared for today. Today's not the day to fucking change things. Get back in there and make the fucking spaghetti. Most of these people are so stuck in their ways, they're incapable of seeing difference, to change. Because they're the same regulars probably for 20 years, 25 years. They come in and get the same shit every single day, every single week. You change things, they get upset. The system doesn't mean it's good. It doesn't mean it's correct. Richie walks out to the line where they were tasting the sandwich. He does the quick look around, make sure no one sees him. But he tastes it, and his eyes almost roll in the back of his head. But it's a moment of him tasting and just being like, oh my fucking God. It's delicious. Cut to the back. Carmen's working on the fucking spaghetti, and Marcus walks up, says, new roll, using the sheet pan trick. Right when he gives it to him, he's like, yeah, you see the difference? And it's the moment where Marcus really starts to respect Carmen with the, you can throw down, can't you? He shows him that one technique, just opening up that small little bit of knowledge to Marcus really opens up Marcus's eyes to, oh, this guy knows how to cook. Carmen doesn't really respond. He doesn't want to boast. But he says, grab me a fresh parm brick, and Marcus' response is perfect. Yes, chef. And the ending is perfect. It's right as Marcus walks away, Carmen's slowly opening up the can of tomatoes for the spaghetti that he doesn't want to make, and the realization that he's gained the respect of guys like Marcus, women like Tina, and so he says, fuck it, and throws the can in the trash. Cue music, end credits.